Just 1 minute. Sorry about that. So Professor Rajkumar is professor and head of the Department of English, Delhi University. His research areas include autobiographical studies, Dalit literature, Indian writing in English, Oriya literature, and post-colonial studies. He has been a fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla in 1999, and has published in journals such as Social Action, Kavita Bulletin, The Fourth World, Creative Forum, Language Forum, Jadavpur Journal of Comparative Literature, Indian Literature, Social Sciences, Journal for the School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies, International Journal of Communication, Ramadevi Women University Journal of Social Studies and Humanities, International Journal of Religious Tourism and Pilgrimage, Ravenshaw Journal of Literary and Cultural Studies, EPW, and Studies in Humanities and Social Sciences. Rajkumar has also translated literary texts from Indian languages, especially from Oriya to English. His book, Dalit Personal Narratives Reading Caste, Nation, and Identity, has been published by Orient Black Swan, New Delhi in 2010 and got reprinted in 2011, 2015, and 2017. His English translation of Akhila Nayak Bheda, the first Oriya Dalit novel, has been published by Oxford University Press, Delhi in 2017. And his book, Dalit Literature and Criticism, was published by Orient Black Swan in 2019. And I mean, I'm sure this is just, a small sample of the work Professor Rajkumar has done. And it is indeed a great pleasure and a privilege for me personally as the convener to welcome him. The moment I asked him, he said yes immediately. So, and thank you so much. And handing over to you, Raj. May I request everybody to mute themselves, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madhumita. Dr. Madhumita Chakrabarti, of course, is the forum. So thank you, Madhumita, and your team, Shudra, of course, Poonam Kaul, Dr. Poonam Kaul, and many others, for invitation. This is very important operation because this is coming out of the new paper that we have introduced, Caste and Literature. So I'll basically base my arguments around that paper, but I'll also try to generalize as the topic is understanding caste in literature. So when I say, of course, Indian literature. So thank you for having invited me. I'm sure that we'll have more questions. I have 30-40 minutes at my hand. So quickly maybe that start my arguments. As I have already that the understanding caste is general, and I would like to be specific by introducing some of the question at the very beginning. For example, that in my lecture, I'll try to problematize the idea of caste as well as Indian literature. So these are, the two components whereby, that we'll try to, of course, get connected to know more about the recent development. Indian literature, like caste, has to be read in plural. India's many literature. So I have to tell my maybe that audience that it is not singular. Caste, we have more than 5,800, though there is no caste census recently. The last caste census that was, that held was in 1931. After that, no caste. So we can guess that there are 1,800 community. So also that we have 22, more than 22, that Indian languages whereby Indian literature is being written. I'm sure, that there will be many more, that Indian languages to be added. So in my lecture, I will ask several questions. And I'm sure, that while discussing about caste and Indian literature, some of the answers would be, of course, offer, but I'll be happy if there are hundreds of questions, maybe, that at the end of my lecture. So generally, that just to begin with, I'll begin with the question, how do we understand caste? It is so simple to understand caste. That is what, that I wanted to frame what is caste, but I have just, that tried to change the framing by saying, how do we understand caste? Because it depends on also, that person to person. What are the primary focuses of Indian literature? Because Indian literature is really very old now, and we are now talking about 21st century. So I'll also talk about the silences that Indian literature has over the years, particularly about caste. Why these silences? How do Indian writers treat caste in their creative writing? Because so far as my research goes, that caste had never talked about or written about before 20th century. Maybe that it is only at the beginning of 20th century that some of the writers started addressing the issue of caste. Why this silence? And if at all, Indian writers, particularly Indian upper caste men, who have started writing Indian literature very early as compared to the Indian upper caste women. Why I say this? Because literacy was not available to Indian women for very long, as we all know that 1860 by Rasu Sundari Devi, that was the first Indian women's autobiography. So we have to also probe that what went wrong in Indian society, why this, that gap between, say, Indian upper caste men as well as women. So several questions, that, and now that Dalit writers have started writing, particularly from 1970s with coming of Dalit Panthers, and for last 50 years, we can go to any corner of India and we'll find Dalit literature, Dalit.
It is on the same road, short of Mata Ka Mandir, if you're going from Mathura.
Who is speaking, please, that.
On that.
Anas, please mute yourself.
It's not me, it's probably somebody else. Sorry.
It's not you. Sorry.
Okay, that. So, and now that, that Dalit writers have started writing, and we have now a full-fledged paper in Delhi University in discipline, of course, that called Caste and Literature. We must also try to understand about how do the Dalit writers treat caste in their writing. Do they write differently or the same as compared to upper caste writer? And of course, with the coming of some of the texts, that I'm sure students are eagerly waiting to know about, say, how does one read a text like Bruton by Om Prakash Valmiki or Shiva Kami's Grief of Change. We have short story by, say, Navaria, Ajay Navaria, Sanjay Bagh, or Ratan Kumar Sambaria, and many more poetry. How does one read Dalit literature? For example, what about the language? Do we talk about Dalit language? What happens to, that when we are introduced to the whole idea of Dalit aesthetic, how is Dalit aesthetic is different from, say, Indian aesthetic? So these are some of the questions that I would be trying to address in my lecture. Hope, that I have sufficient time to, that deliberate on all this. Now, the first question that I would like to, reflect on, this is actually a reflection. The first part is understanding caste. It seems, that we all more or less, we know about caste, but then I would like to emphasize on certain things by giving a little maybe, that introduction to the whole idea of caste. Because of a student's audience, maybe, that they would like to know more about. The term caste is a Portuguese word. It derives from the word casta, which means group. And it could be any group, by the way. It is not, that. So it could be animals, birds, or insect, or human beings. Casta, this is a Portuguese word. And in Indian context, as we all know, that the entire population of India are divided into two categories called upper caste and lower caste. So this idea of caste, that is basically hierarchized. There is a hierarchy, and this hierarchy is permanent. When I say permanent, caste is fixed, not like class. Caste is not class. Please, try to understand that class is always dynamic. Because today, if someone is poor, there is every possibility that tomorrow he could be rich or she could be rich. It is also not race. Caste is never a race. Even though, that the origination of caste, which is called Varna, refers to color in English translation. I'll try to, that take a minute or two to deliberate on this. So when I say, that there is a permanent hierarchy backed by religion, because I'm just making a statement. Hope that if you have any question, you can ask me. Had there been no religion, caste would have disappeared by now. This is my statement. I repeat, had there been no religion, caste would have been, that caste would have disappeared by now. So that is why the sociologists, they always talk about the idea of purity and pollution, which is basically, the religious term. And so when I talk about, the permanent hierarchy, caste is fixed, as I have already told you. Once a Brahmin, always a Brahmin. Once a Sudra, always a Sudra. Once a Dalit, always a Dalit. Even after one's death, because the, death rituals that we always, that try to organize. So the caste follow after, meaning caste follows after even someone's death. So this is very, very, interesting phenomenon. Now, that having said this, that there is no social mobility in India. How much sociologists they talk about caste, my understanding of caste is that there is no social mobility. And that's why in our day-to-day life, that sometimes, that we may reject caste, but I always, that try to make people understand that caste is always there, everywhere, including, that a cosmopolitan city like Delhi. Because if you have any doubt, you can always look at the Sunday newspaper, the matrimonial column, whereby, the caste is being always referred to, because as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in his very famous book called Annihilation of Caste, which was published in 1936, talks about caste is nothing but endogamy. That's where the very recent book by Suraj Yangede, Caste Matters, this was published as that the latest book, that this is Caste Matters 2020, where that people are talking. Hello. Yeah, so maybe that so there are disturbances anyway. So the latest book is called so the latest book is called Caste Matters by Suraj Yankade, where he talks about that that caste can also appear somewhere in the university campus. And the last paragraph is very interesting. That in his book, if you read that Manu, the old that Hindu lawgiver who started writing what is called Manusmriti or Manushastra, maybe peeping at from any corner of the university campus. So if we try to say that argue that there is no caste in India, that in 21st century we are wrong. And that's why that the whole idea of say what we eat, what we wear today, how to talk, how do we behave, how to marry, how to love, that whom do I love, say, for example, whom do I marry? All these are being determined by caste, the rules. And therefore, the relevance of an institution called Caste Panchayat even today. I should not, that
Dr. Rajkumar has been muted.
yeah,
Can he be heard now?
someone is muting. Yeah, maybe if there is we, that, okay, yeah. So I don't know, what did I say, that I was telling that in everyday life, for example, that what we eat, what we wear, how we talk, how we behave, whom I love, for example, whom I marry, all these are being, that determined by caste rules. And that's where the relevance of caste panchayat even today. Now, that if I talk little maybe about the origin of caste, the historicity, that because why it is, that relevant even in 21st century, its origination goes back to, that ancient India. Initially, of course, our students, friend, they should know that there was no caste, there was Varna. Varna, that if you read, say, Rig Veda, particularly 10th mandala, Purusa Sukta, there is reference to Purusa P in capital, whereby, that Purusa gave birth to 4 different Varnas. So it seems, that Purusa gave birth to Brahman from mouth, and Kshatriya from arms, say Vaishya from thigh, and Shudra from feet. Of course, these are, that interpreted as metaphor. So if you agree with, that traditional scholars, they will say that, no, this is the God created, that caste. But, that this metaphor can be taken forward by interpreting that, that how come, say, that if you think about Brahman has any right, say Brahman will, that mouth suggests that Brahman's duty is always to preach and teach. Always, I'm using, that always to preach and teach. And Kshatriya, of course, to fight, and that's where arms. Vaishya is to indulge in trade and commerce, and then Shudra is to serve all the 3 other upper castes. Now, Varna is, as we all translate into English, as color. And as I have already mentioned, that there is no way caste has any relationship with race. Race is color, white and black. Yeah. Now, at one point of time, Varna became Jati. When, why, how, who made it, no one knows. But then all of a sudden, we also come to realize that there is another category called Atishudra, who later became untouchable. So post-Vedic time, that we have always a reference to certain caste practices, and by the time you reach to Gupta period, if you are reading history, I should also refer to Indian history. By Gupta period, it is very clear, that caste and untouchability practices. Now, that what is very important about, meaning I should not talk all this thing because maybe, that due to lack of time, but all of a sudden we found caste laws. Several law books were being written. It is not just Manusmriti. There are more than 220 Dharma Shastra. And Dharma Shastra is basically written to prohibit freedom of lower caste, Dalits, and women. Women of all community, by the way. So that, that we have, say, a Shastra like Artha Shastra, Koka Shastra, Kama Shastra, apart from Manu Shastra. So we have more than 220 Smriti. So what is most important about, that all these Dharma Shastra, as I have already told you, that all 3 upper castes are, the privilege in Indian society to do whatever they like. But for the lower caste, women, and so-called untouchable. Now, untouchability has been banned, as we all know, according to Indian Constitution, Article 17. So we are, that using ex-untouchable, the term, who are now Dalit. But what these Dharma Shastra made these people, that more than 85% people of India, it could be more than 85%, that they became slave of the caste system. Say, education was denied to all low caste women and Dalit. As a result, knowledge became a kind of, that private property of the upper caste man. Upper caste man, I'm trying to emphasize, that. And therefore, whenever you talk about, say, that even today, about education, or, any equality or freedom, there is always a kind of status quo in Indian society. So we are debating about, say, there is no reservation in, say, for women. For last 10 or 15 years, we are debating about that there is no reservation of women. Say maybe reservation for Dalit, tribals, OBC are there, but not women, because that we are yet to come to a consensus. So this is what, that the idea of status quo is a tendency. As a result, Indian society has, there are several loopholes maybe, that. So it took lots of time, that before coming of the British, maybe you could imagine that it was dark age in India. It is only after coming of the British, thanks for Christian missionaries, that education became, that a education was available for particularly, that Dalit, Adivasi women for the first time. If I go back to history of India, that 1854, this is late as 1854, that Phule, Jyotiba Phule and his wife Savitribai Phule for the first time set up a school for untouchable boys and girls. And Muktabai, that is a disciple of that school, a student of that school, has written a fascinating essay. 13 years old, that Dalit girl, and perhaps that could have been the first a Dalit woman's, that essay, so fascinating, that she talks about Mang and Mahar, that history. Anyway, that, so I should also tell you that there was always protest against caste. It is not that, that caste was never contested, beginning from Buddha, in fact, the 4th century BC. And we have, of course, that 1,000 years of Bhakti movement from 7th century AD to 17th century AD, so 1,000 years actually. And look at, that Kabir, Namdev, Chukamela, these are some of the names. There is no time to actually, that bring their logic and, that explanation, that Kabir is the best, perhaps, that he was one of the most radical, whereby he questioned the whole idea of, that, of course, he questioned both Hindu and Muslim orthodoxy, but look at some of his critics on Hindu religiosity. And of course, in the 19th century, what I call anti-caste intellectuals, beginning from Phule, then Ambedkar, Periyar, Narayan Guru, Bhima Bhoi, Manguram. Manguram, I don't know whether you have heard about, in Punjab, Achyutanand from UP. So you go to any part of India, there were several anti-caste intellectuals who brought this caste debate into the public sphere for discussion and debate. Now, now, because that we are also talking about Indian literature, like Indian society, was silent on caste issue. Indian literature, that never bothered, particularly Indian writers, never addressed the caste issue for very long. As I told you, till 20th century, till, what we call modern time. Thanks for perhaps, that coming of British, they introduced several, that measures, for example, railway, telegraph, that printing press, census, archives, these are some of the things that you must also understand how Indian culture and religion got punctured, so that all of a sudden, that there started a caste debate in public sphere. I'm talking about, because now there is newspaper, and it is perhaps this reason that in 1920s, particularly 1921, the first novel, Indian novel called Malapalli, was written by Unnava Lakshmi Narayan Rao, Telugu writer. It is an epical, that novel, because more than 300 pages published by Sahitya Academy. But till 1975, it did not get translated. So many of us would not know about its existence. So from 1921 onwards, having what is called Reformation agenda, some of the social reformers, also they were writers, they started writing about caste issues. So I'll just name some of them. I run an MPhil course called Touchable Tales, whereby, that these writers say we study writers of Indian, that say upper caste Indian writers, beginning from Unnava Lakshmi Narayan to say Premchand's Rangbhumi, 1925 in Hindi, then Shivram Karant, Chomana Dudi, translated as Chomasdam, 1933, then Mulkraj Anand's Untouchable, 1935, and then of course, that we have too many others like Sivasankar Pillai called Scavenger's Son from Kerala. Odisha, we have Gopinath Mahanti's Harijan, 1948, and then of course we have Anantamurthy, Sanskara, 1965, and Bharatipura. These are the two seminal works by Anantamurthy. God of Small Thing by Arundhati Rai. And the last novel that I would like to on is called Man by Joseph, 2010. So we try to review the entire, that Indian literature, whereby these writers, they might be writing about caste issue, but in general, I have to, try to make a critique of it by saying, of course, that not individually, but in general, that whenever they write about low caste or women or Dalit, they always try to portray them in very negative, that image. For them, that low caste characters are lazy, quarrelsome, cheat, drunkard, so all these negative images. So this particular instance could be taken forward if you are trying to understand the debate between, say, that Dalit writers and non-Dalit writers. It is just like, that bringing the whole debate of Gandhi and Ambedkar, because both of them, that hope Gandhi at one point of time wanted to lead, that untouchables, or what he called Harijan. The idea of, that taking untouchables along with, so that he can fight freedom movement. Whereas Dalit writers, they try to defy it by saying that, that we have a fascinating book by D.R. Nagaraj. And there is a chapter called Gandhi Ambedkar debate, whereby he talks about, say, the debate between Gandhi and Ambedkar is just like, that someone who is, that a child has been, say, it is just like the relationship between, say, mother and nurse. For a child, that whether mother is equivalent to nurse, that is what the question is. Now, that I should try to come to my second part, and perhaps, that this is where the, that real focus should be, that now in post-independent India, education became compulsory. Hope 14 years compulsory education for all. Thanks for Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the chairman of the drafting committee, who wrote Indian Constitution, and he is also called Modern Manu because he, that question not only, that caste orthodoxy, etc., etc., but he challenged, that the whole idea of caste rule by bringing what is called neutral law, and that's why Indian Constitution is very progressive, democratic in spirit and nature. Now, the whole idea of, that education made Dalit, particularly in 1970 with coming of Dalit Panthers, as we all know. And this is quite important because Dalit Panthers following Black Panthers, that the idea of Black Panthers from America became a very radical organization to not only question the whole idea of caste and caste inequality and that injustice, social injustice, but very meticulously and deliberately, some of the writers and activists, they started writing about caste issue. So there came Dalit literature, following, of course, Ambedkar's, that idea of what is called liberty, equality, and fraternity. Yeah, this is the whole idea of Dalit literature. Now, as I have already told you that ever since 1970s, particularly 1972 onward, we have what is called modern Dalit literature. This idea of, that Dalit literature, as I have already talked about, is not only just to question the whole idea of caste inequality and injustice, social injustice. This injustice could be social, political, and economic, of course. But that look at some of the debates. The first and foremost debate we have to bother actually to know about is because the that in Hindi belt this debate is going on even today. Yeah, Anubhuti versus Sahanubhuti. No, these are the two words that you have to understand. Anubhuti is experience, based on experience. Who can write for Dalit? Yeah, who can write for Dalit? Of course, anyone can write for Dalit. If you read Dalit Panthers, that manifesto, which is 1.5 page, they say that anyone can write about Dalit. But the problem is that when the upper caste Indian writers, they write about Dalit, there are problems, as I have already pointed out. And that's why, that Dalit, they don't need sympathy and pity. Yeah. Uh, what they need is dignity, self-respect, and justice. This is where the Dalit writings have to be emphasized on the idea of self-respect, dignity, and that equality. So if we know about the origin, the Dalit writings started with the whole idea of poetry. As we all know, the poetry is spontaneous, overflow, powerful feeling. Dalit were silent over millennia. I say millennia, not ages or not century, but millennia. And they wanted to speak out the truth. Actually, the Dalit writing is also to be considered as speaking truth to power. Because the whole idea of speaking truth to power is also to contest the authority or the, that where the power center is. And that's why that after poetry of course came, meaning I could have talked about poetry, the language of that say Namdev Dhasal. If I can just give you one example, Namdev Dhasal, who is considered to be a maverick poet, that he is a very famous anthologist called Gol Pitha. He happens to be from a slum area. So by the time he finished writing his anthology, Golpita, he wanted Vijay Tendulkar to write his foreword. Vijay Tendulkar, it seemed, who is also a very well-known Marathi playwright, would not understand as many as 65 words of Namdev Dhasal, even though he writes in Marathi. This is what irony is, that because the language of the slum, that everyday language. So what I emphasize here, that with the coming of Dalit literature, there is also a new language, everyday, ordinary, and common people, that whatever they are speaking, that is coming into the purview of Indian literature. So this is what, that I say, Vamas Karukku, if you read, it is not the mainstream Tamil, but the everyday Tamil spoken by ordinary and common people of the street. So, of course, that we don't read original Tamil or Marathi. We always read in translation. But translation has also its difficulty, as that if we can just talk about a minute, that of course translating the literature is the only way to, that as Sujit Mukherjee talks about translation as a discovery. It is only through translation that we could discover so many texts. But then translation has also its, that problem, because some of the cultural connotation might get lost in the process of translation that we have to bother about as a student of literature. Now, what comes after poetry is autobiography, that autobiography, because that is what, that the Dalit writers know the best. And in fact, after autobiography, whatever comes, maybe whether it is short story, whether it is novel, whether it is play, that almost every form in Dalit literature is autobiographical. This is to be understood, that. So if P. Sivakami is writing a novel called Grip of Change, of course, Grip of Change is about a Dalit patriarch. So there is a debate about whether there is Dalit patriarchy. Kancha Elia, in his book, famous book called Why I'm Not Hindu, would say that Dalit tribals and low caste, they are egalitarian, so there is no patriarchy. This debate is being, that dismissed by Gopal Guru, who writes an essay, Dalit Women Talk Differently, and Sharmila Rege writes, that another piece. This was a debate in EPW. Now, that we have Baby Kamle's Prison We Broke, and P. Sivakami's, the Grip of Change, whereby they talk about both of them. These are very important, the contribution made by Dalit women's rights. They say that there is Dalit patriarchy, and of course, that their opinions are being further, corroborated by Gopal Guru, Sharmila Rege in other books, that say Sharmila Rege has now 2 books, Writing Caste, Writing Gender, and the last book is Madness of Manu. Now, what is most important about, say, Dalit writings, because that novels earlier were not there. Yeah, novel as a form has to be imagined, because it is also a kind of that universal understanding of not only one individual subject, but how does one connect to the world. And today, of course, we have too many novels and too many short stories. Say Ajay Nabaria, I just want to point out in one maybe, that sentence, that he tries to bring the whole idea of Dalit middle class, particularly, that while, that education is now available, Dalit are getting big posts maybe, that thanks for reservation, etc., etc. But mentally and morally, whether they are able to adjust to the casteist, that or caste prejudice, that space, particularly in cosmopolitan cities like Delhi. So Ajay Navaria's story, he has a book called Unclaimed Terrain. He talks about the psychological, say, portrayal of Dalit middle class. How do they cope with? Even though, say, someone is getting a higher job, is it possible because all the institution in India are, that casteist, because the caste prejudice is always there, that. So these are some of the things that we have to be really very careful. Now maybe that I'll conclude, because we may take many more questions. What I want to to conclude by saying that with the coming of the literature, as we all know, we have not only that new language but also new aesthetic. And this idea of Dalit aesthetic, as Saran Kumar Limbale, there are 2 good books, as you might know, towards understanding of Dalit aesthetic by Saran Kumar Limbale, which is available in English. And Om Prakash Balmeki has a Hindi version, of course, that called Dalit Saundarya Shastra, which is not translated into English yet. Hopefully, that it will be translated soon. Now, the whole idea of Dalit aesthetic is to question, interrogate what is called mainstream aesthetic, because mainstream Indian aesthetic talks about rasa and pani. Yeah. Whereas, that Dalit aesthetic talks about, that not only questioning what is called Satyam Shivam Sundaram, that here I wanted to, the question, for example, Satya, what is, the truth about Indian society? Yeah. Saran Kumar Limbale asks about what is truth about Indian society. And the truth is, as Phule, long back, in his book called Gulamgiri, which was written in 1873, talks about, that caste is nothing but slavery. His book, Gulamgiri, is available in English translation as slavery. Yeah. So what is truth about Indian society is caste is nothing but slavery. So this idea of Satyam is to be questioned. Now, that Shivam is, that welfare. Well, whose welfare we talk about while we read Indian literature? And the last is also, Sundaram is beautification. How does one beautify? That if there are caste inequalities and injustice, how does one think about Indian society as a beautiful, that place to live in? So these are some of the, the question that Dalit writers are asking about. Now that we have a full paper called Caste and Literature, where Dalit aesthetic, is a kind of alternative way to look at Indian society, culture, literature, and history. And by the way, that Dalit writers are not just writing about caste. They're also talking about class, as I have already told you, also gender, ethnicity, nationalism, religion, region, and of course, that the whole idea of, the aesthetic. So I think, that say, if you are reading Bama is, that Bama is not a simple Dalit writer. She is also a Tamil Dalit, that Christian woman. The four concept, if you are reading Bama, then, that Tamil Dalit Christian woman, because now caste has also been extended to other religious sphere, like it is not just confined to Hinduism, but also Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and, that Sikhism. So now that, that Dalit texts are being introduced in colleges and university, and I'm sure, that, that Dalit studies are not just, that introduced in India, also abroad. Everywhere you go, that Dalit study is now a autonomous discipline like English study, women's study, tribal study. So how does one read a Dalit text? So my sincere request to all of you, whether you are teachers or students, to be sensible and sensitive to the whole idea of, that Dalit, because as I have already told you, that unless and until we try to understand about Dalit as a subject who is fighting for, that not only equality, also dignity and self-respect, Dalit texts are also to be understood in that, sense. So I think, that I should stop here because, that I have spoken more than 40 minutes, and it is better that we take up some of the questions. Thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Rajkumar. It was an invigorating talk. I think we've all come out of it with a lot of learning. Can I request Moksha and Khushi Pandey to take over the question answer sessions? May I request all, everybody who is here to please put your questions in the chat box for Professor Rajkumar so that he can take up the questions one by one. Thank you.
Yeah, so the first question I can see is Murari Prasad. What is your take on an empathetic portrayal of Dalit character by an upper caste writer? How would you read the transgression of caste law in The God of Small Thing? Empathetic, sympathetic, spurious? Okay, considering, that. So I have to tell you that Arundhati Roy is sympathetically, of course, that try to portray the character, though, but again, it is stereotypical. What I can, that say every Indian upper caste writer, whether male or female, the problem with them is that they are sympathetic, definitely, but I have also already pointed out that Dalit, they don't need sympathy. But this idea of stereotypical, that representation. So when say, that Dalit character is always portrayed, say in Arundhati Roy, Got a Small Thing, that he's a carpenter, that, and his body, particularly, that his athletic body, because he's doing physical or manual work, that his physique, the idea of, portrayal of his body as, that not only strong, but also beautiful. So this particular way of describing, the Dalit body is something, that not wanted. It is also, that the same with Anantamurti, even Premchand. I can give you several examples. Premchand in Godan tries to depict a tribal woman who has athletic body as compared to say, Dr. What is her name? That we have a doctor, that who is considered to be a potted plant. So also Anantamurti in both Sanskara and Bharatipura. Sanskara particularly, all Dalit women are being portrayed as, that they are like Rambha, Menasi and...
My network here, or is there a problem at Professor Rajkumar's end? Mine.
That I'm talking, Madhumita. Is it clear?
Okay, so it is me. Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, so what I'm just trying to, answer Murari, question is that the stereotypical imaginary portrayal of Dalit characters are, misplaced. And, that of course we need empathetic, understanding, not sympathetic, as I have already told you. Dalit, they don't need sympathy because, one has to empathize with their position, their place, their maybe, that someone says that you have to really put your legs in their shoes, Dalit shoes, maybe, that if they have shoes, and know about where it pinches, then only. So my answer to Murari's thing is that we don't need sympathy, we need empathy, and empathy in such a way that we also try to be one with Dalit characters. So that is what, that my answer will be, if it, that satisfy you. Dipya,
good evening, sir. May
yes.
I read out the questions?
No, I can read, Dibya, or you want to read. Can you please tell us more about modern literature and whether the responsibility to humanize low caste in literature is more balanced now, visible in the works of high caste authors? How did the British era reshape the caste system, and is it visible in our post-independence literature? Humanize, that to some extent, that I'll agree with you partially, Divya, that for the first time, say, in 1921, as I told you, say, Unnava Lakshminarayan writing Malapalli, or even Mulkraj and writing Untouchable, at least, that by writing the novels, they could bring out the caste debate into the public sphere. And Mulkraj Anand, particularly by writing in English, he takes up this issue of caste to the international, that maybe audience, because he's writing in English, and giving a title Untouchable itself is a very daring act, because the others are writing about, say, that community name like Chamar, Mochi, Bhangi, etc., which are, that not wanted. So definitely they are concerned about, as I told you, that because of social reform. But look at that Mulkraj Anand. By then, that 1932 Pune Pact had happened. Mulkraj Anand, in fact, had interviewed Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, but he doesn't mention about Ambedkar. He brings Gandhi into his discussion. So I don't think, that whether they have humanized lower caste. That will be my contestation. That yes, they are concerned about, but I don't know whether they have humanized. Now, British, they did, that many good things, I must tell you, because thanks for them, I told you that there was the presence of public sphere. As I have already told you, railways, roads, and this railway has to be understood, because Karl Marx, if you read, Karl Marx all of a sudden wrote, way back, that during the British rule in India, that now caste is going to vanish because there is railways. And M.N. Srinivas, who is considered to be father of Indian sociology also, at one point, the writes that now that railways are there, perhaps caste is going to vanish. Because in railways, people will jostle each other, no? They will, look at Bombay local, there is no space also, yeah? The idea of untouchability may not be there, but then, that is not true. So both Marx and M.N. Srinivas, they went wrong because caste appears in various forms. But what I want to emphasize that British brought a law. Divya, this is to be understood properly. They replace what is called Hindu law. Hindu law is always partial, always only for upper caste man, never for lower caste or women. The idea of British law is that equality for everyone. So in many Indian texts, say we have Fakir Mohan Senapati Chaumana Athagunta, 6 acres, and the third, which is now part of discipline course. He talks about, Fakir Mohan Senapati talks about that under British law, both the landlord and also, that the village chowkidar, they go to jail because both of them are wrong. It doesn't, say British law doesn't differentiate whether you are upper caste or lower caste, whether you are man or woman. No, so this is to be understood. But one, that thing Indians, they always, they talk about is, it is during British that caste got, that highlighted, which is wrong. Maybe because it was the presence of public sphere. It was not, the caste was not there earlier, and during British time it got strengthened. Maybe, that as I have already told you that many anti-caste intellectuals beginning from Phule, Ambedkar and many others, they got chance to bring debate and discussion around caste during, that British rule. So that might be the reason why, that we see more and more caste debate in maybe, that in 19th century, particularly mid 19th century and 20th century. So this is what, that I have to say. Now,
The next question is from Anjali.
yeah, Anjali.
Anjali Thaplia also.
Anjali,
Yeah.
why does reservation system exist? Reservation, Anjali, reservation is not sympathy. Reservation, that if I can answer this, that reservation is there from the very ancient time, as I have already told you, that the upper caste, they have reservation always. Look at even today, that you can go to any extent. Anjali, if you know the statistics of, say, Delhi University professor, yeah, and there are always, that statistic given that you go to any public institution, upper caste are high. They are the, that one who are ruling India. So Prime Minister of India, you count how many Brahmin Prime Minister, how many Chief Justice of India, the Brahmins, Chief Minister in state. You come to Delhi University, how many professors are upper caste, how many lower caste, that. So reservation is not sympathy. Maybe, that you are wrong in your understanding. Reservation is what is called discriminatory provision. If you understand the term, it is called discriminatory provision, whereby because Dalit, Adivasi, women, they have been deprived of over millennia, this is just one opportunity to bring the whole idea of equality, so that, that we give them equal opportunity. So if you understand this idea of equal opportunity, because say, that if I can give you the statistics available, that 15% of India's population who happen to be from the upper caste, 15%, that look at society, paramedical, 85% are lower caste and 15% upper caste. But more than 80% position in Indian society, wherever you go to any, meaning forget about private space, but public space, more than 80% jobs are being taken by the upper caste even today. So that is the problem, that So how do we expect to achieve equality on an unequal background? I think, that Ambedkar, when he thought about reservation, he thought only for 10 years, by the way, hoping that Indian caste society will give them enough chance. But if I can give you example from Delhi University alone, even today we have not been able to fulfill the reservation criteria. The Delhi University did not give reservation till 90s. It is only after 91, 92, thanks for BP Singh's, that government, which was considered as, that say year of social justice and empowerment. So only after 91, 92, Delhi University started giving a reservation, and even today, our that vacancies are not filled up. So I don't think that the whole idea of reservation that Ambedkar thought about, that 10 years, the that particularly SC, ST, OBC of course came much later, but SC, ST, the reservation would have given them equal chance or enough chance, that to be at par with the upper caste. That has not happened. So I think, that if you are talking about reservation is perhaps, that we need to perhaps think about all this. Amitosh Kumar.
Just to interrupt 1 minute, Raj, I think the principal has, yes, Professor Beg has joined the meeting.
Right.
So,
good evening.
Good evening, sir. Sir, you are muted, sir. Sir, principal, sir, you are muted.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm so sorry, Professor Chakraborty, for joining late. Reason being, the college was holding the building committee meeting. It has just finished.
Yeah, I understand. Mother told us.
I'm so sorry.
You are busy, so never mind.
No, sir.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for the interruption.
So we are having the question.
Yeah.
No. So we are just having the question answer session. Once that is done, sir, you may speak. After that, you may speak, sir.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah.
Amitosh Kumar is asking, earlier you mentioned that liberty, equality, and fraternity were the main theme of Dalit literature. Sir, how did these certain themes travel from their actual origin, the French folklore, to one of the lowest appreciated social classes of the British Raj, and independent India recognizes the struggle of both stacks for a survival or basic amenity? No, that Amitosh, you have to understand that, of course, that we, that sometimes think that equality, fraternity, and freedom, that came from French Revolution of 1789, which was not true. Ambedkar traces back to Buddha. Buddha was the first person perhaps to talk about liberty, equality, and fraternity. So perhaps, that has to be understood in a, that particular way. But you say that it still amuses me, the spread of the themes to people who barely were permitted to read. So, that whether they are literate or illiterate, the idea of equality, even in ordinary, that way, even if suppose they are not able to read, the idea of freedom and equality will be, a basic corner of every individual, because otherwise the subjectivity will be lost. So I think, that it doesn't need, that literacy for a person to demand the idea of equality and freedom. So that will be my answer. Natasha, could you please speak about the inclusion of courses like Dalit study in the curriculum of many universities? What are the politics of their inclusion and the danger of this inclusion as being merely a tokenism? See, that, of course, Natasha, there is, that when we try to develop a curriculum, any kind of, that curriculum, whether it is Dalit study or tribal study, women's study, now, that we are also trying to include disability study or LGBTQ, queer study, etc., etc. So every time we think about a new curriculum, we talk about the idea of inclusiveness. no, for very long Indian literature, of course, that partially introduced, say in Delhi University when we designed the syllabus way back in maybe, that 2009 and then 12 and then 15. So the idea of inclusion is, sorry, the politics of inclusion is, of course, that the idea of inclusivity. Now, that it depends on who are designing the course. There is always a danger, that if you say danger, Indian society is basically status quoist society, as I have already pointed out. And people don't want to bring discussion and debates into the public fora now. That the idea of equality, for example, is not there. So let's not talk about caste, say, because caste is dangerous, no? Or the idea of, say, women demanding the idea of equality, that is also dangerous. So if you are talking about danger being, that the idea of inclusivity, idea of equality, justice, then, that these are to be perhaps, that counteracted by introducing more and more text so that our students and also teachers, they know about where we stand for, because Indian society for very long, we have been trying to bring, that the whole idea of equality in different form, and perhaps designing a curriculum is one way to address the idea of, that inclusiveness. So this will be my answer. So for tokenism, I don't know, because that we are also trying now. I think that Delhi University has more than 25 or 30% maybe that course on, say, Dalit study. We have been able to include many more texts on disability. Of course, gender is there. Queer study is there. So we are trying to that be inclusive. But it depends on who are the authorities, because authorities are always afraid of, that debating these issues. So these are to be, of course, understood in a, that particular context. Nino is asking the representation of Dalit women in the short movie called Gili Puchi is one of the manipulation leaning towards lesbianism. As you mentioned, there are stereotype representation. When does the system get out of this? That, Nino, it is in our mind, because one is not just, the caste prejudice, also gender. And if both caste and gender, that there are theories now that in Indian society, caste and patriarchy emerge simultaneously, that perhaps, that at the same time. So, that this caste-mindedness, as Nicholas Darks very rightly puts, that his book called Caste of Mind. So also, that we are gender prejudice. So as long as we are caste prejudice and gender prejudice, this will continue. And that's why, that even though we have enacted several laws, this caste-mindedness or gender-mindedness, no, the idea of patriarchy is not going. So that will be my answer to your question. Okay. Murari is asking another question. Do you see a class hierarchy among the Dalit caste? Yes, I use the word middle class Dalits. Now, that Dalit are also called middle class because there is a class tag between, that say rich Dalit. We have now what is called Dalit Chamber of Commerce also, like, that Indian Chamber of Commerce. So, yes. So what can this fragmentation across Dalit caste be attributed to? This is, that the caste and class fragmentation will come, as we all know. But what is most important is, that whether there will be Dalit movement to bring a Dalit unity. So that will be, that my answer to your question. Sharina, Rostov was made in 2000 after an intervention by the court. Yes, Sharina, that so still we are, that fighting, what is due for, we have to fight. So Mukti, okay, the culture of silence and prejudice thinking sadly continue. Okay, thank you, Mukti. So I think
There's a question by Raf. There is a question by Shirina right at the end. She asked, "Could you speak of Anubhuti and Sahanubhuti in the depiction of Dalits and women?" And after that, I think Rajendra wants to ask his question to you personally.
okay. Okay.
Dr. Madhumita,
Yeah.
can,
Yes,
I,
sir.
can I interact for a moment with Professor Rajkumar? Because I
Yeah.
have to leave for another
Absolutely,
meeting.
sir.
Please.
Yes, sir. Sir, please, you can
I'm
please
extremely
speak a few
sorry.
words. Yes.
I'm extremely sorry, Professor Rajkumar, for jumping in between reason being this is not good in the sense that otherwise, had I taken would have gone from this place to another place, the internet connectivity would have broken.
Yeah.
So I welcome you, Professor Rajkumar, to the fraternity of Zakir Hussain Delhi College evening to this seminar or webinar instead. And this is a really very good initiative taken by Dr. Madhumita for having lecture series in the area of English literature. I could hear only some of the part, particularly about the question hour session. In fact, I don't know, I'm sure you must have spoken that the reservation is a form of a positive discrimination. Is positive discrimination because negative discrimination is already inherited by our present generation, that we have already inherited the negative discrimination. So to create a situation of equality, this positive discrimination has to be done by the form of affirmative action. So this reservation is a kind of a affirmative action. Moreover, there are many people who feel pain because of the reservation, and there is no need to do that thing, because even now, if we talked about reservation or talk about the reservation in Delhi University, still we are many of us are sitting against the general post. Like myself in the day college where I've taken a leave, my position is reserved for OBC. So if I go back to, though somebody is teaching, because I have joined Zakir Hussain Evening College, if I go back to the Zakir Hussain Day College, one teacher teaching against my post will be dislodged, and that she belongs to OBC category. So until unless the requisite reservation is ensured, and that is, we will consider it as per their proportion of the population. Say, for example, 27% for OBC, or say 15% for scheduled caste and 7.5 for the scheduled tribe. Once we achieve that target, then there will not be any need for further reservation. But that has to be fulfilled. Though Dr. Ambedkar, as you said, that talked about 10-year reservation, something like that. Had we achieved that equality, there could have been no question of reservation in the present circumstances. The reason for which the reservation was assured for the underprivileged section of the society, that is being prolonged. That means our government machinery, our say the kind of economic system that we have in our country, say we call it a mixed economy. We have sometimes we used to have preponderance of public sector. Now we are seeing that we are having preponderance of private sector, and where reservation is nil, zero, there is no reservation in a private sector. And gradually, or say very fast, I would say, the de-reservation of industries are taking place. Industries are being shifted from government ownership to private ownership. So this process of positive discrimination is going to linger on, is going to be dragged further. And if I have a vision for, say, reservation will be over by, say, 2030, due to all these reasons, the reservation will not be over by 2050. Reason being, we are giving fewer and fewer opportunities. And said you were talking about equal opportunity to reserve section or to the underprivileged section. Instead, we are moving towards unequal opportunity by de-reserving industries from the government sector to private sector. So that is the thing that I just wanted to express my idea, that the positive discrimination need to be escalated further. And at my own level, I did it in Zakir Hussain Evening College. wherever some of the vacancies were, say, illegally occupied or somehow due to certain manipulations and all, were occupied by general categories, that's we call now UR category presently, has been given to the reserve category in Zakir Hussain Evening College, in the Urdu department, EVS and other many other subjects. But people, sir, forget also. This is also one thing. People do not remember that a person who tried to create a justice, he also or she also needs a justice. So justice is pervasive. Everybody needs justice. So I in my own capacity, I tried to some extent. No, I cannot do beyond that. My area is limited. My area is limited to Zakir Hussain Evening College. For nearly 3 years, my area was expanded from Zakir Hussain Evening to Zakir Hussain Morning also. So there also I did a lot of positive discrimination by creating more and more posts for their respective categories, and the reservation was done. Even in Zakir Hussain Day College, prior to my joining, 80-90 guests were being appointed in every semester. 80-90 guests were appointed in different departments in every semester. There was no reservation. No candidate was appointed prior to my joining Zakir Hussain Day College from reserve categories. Not even single person used to come. Okay, let the recording be there. So, so I introduced the roster system in guest also. In guest, for the recruitment of guests in Zakir Hussain Day College, I introduced the roster system. This was some of people take as an innovative idea. Instead, what happened, sir? When I advertised the post that guest required, say, in X department, English department, 15th last year, sir, before the corona, during the corona time, at the beginning of the corona time, 15 teachers were appointed in English department, Zakir Hussain Day College, from different categories. So I used to get a threat call from those people who talk about those who are themselves from the reserve categories. They are the big netas of Delhi University. And you could imagine, now you can think of, people have named themselves in the name of flower. Flower. Hindi में नहीं बोल रहा हूँ, अंग्रेजी में बोल रहा हूँ, सब फ्लावर नाम से जाने जाते हैं. मुझे कॉल किया कि आपने एडहॉक वैकेंसी को गेस्ट में कन्वर्ट कर दिया है और आप जो है रिजर्व कैटेगरी को डिप्राइव कर रहे हैं. Not sir, even a single post belonging to ad hoc category where it was a substantive post. No substantive posts were converted into any kind of a guest post and thereby giving reservation. This was just add-on. Sir, मुझे justice करने पर हमें हमारे against injustice भी होता है. सर, इस जस्टिस को भी सर देखिएगा कभी न कभी, और कहीं आपको मौका मिले कि जो जस्टिस करने वाले लोग हैं उनके खिलाफ इनजस्टिस होता. अखबार में छापा, उस फ्लावर ने अखबार में छापा कि बेग साहब रिजर्वेशन की अवहेलना कर रहे हैं, एडहॉक की कैटेगरी वाली पोस्ट को डिवाइड कर दिया है डिफरेंट कैटेगरीज में. नॉट इवन आई कॉल्ड द लाइजन ऑफिसर ऑफ SC/ST. हमने कहा what your representatives are doing. Well, sir, he is a foolish person, this and that. I know that you are correct, and you have instead introduced reservation in guest positions also. So there are n number of examples for doing affirmative jobs, and I'm sure that I will not take much of your time because you said you are a learned person in area of literature and all. So this was just I wanted to say that those who fight for justice, they are demeaned, they are defamed due to some other tag or some other name is given to defame them in different names, and so that person like me or anyone should never move towards the positive discrimination or affirmative action. Thank you, sir, for the intervention period. Now I will be continued your discussion, but all depends upon the internet connectivity. Thank you, Dr. Madhumita, for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for sparing your time.
आपने
कल ही कहा था कि आप बहुत busy होंगे. So thank you for sparing your time, sir.
Thank you
I've
for
spoken
joining
so many
in.
sentences. I've spoken so many sentences. Sir, Dr. Madhumita is a witness
No,
of
sir.
positive discrimination Zakir Evening College. Maybe she's not aware about Zakir Day College. Some of the teachers who would have joined
All
from
the time,
Zakir
sir.
Day College must witness that I did it. Thank you, sir, for
Yes,
allowing
sir.
me to
We
speak
are
in
aware,
between.
especially in admission. Thank you, sir.
Lovely work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So I think Sharina was asking about Anubhuti Sahanubhuti, and then there are a few more questions that have come. So
Yeah.
in this meanwhile,
Can I ask a question?
yeah. So Raj wanted to ask
Can
the
I ask a
question
question?
personally. So yeah. Go ahead,
Sir,
Raj.
sir,
Good.
1 minute intervention more, sir. Sir,
Aye.
1 minute intervention, sorry to say again.
Aye.
It's not question of Sahanbhuti or anything else. It's a matter of due rights.
Okay.
And if we take somebody's right,
Absolutely.
the person who's taking the right is not right.
Very right. Very
It's an encroachment to the rights. Thank
Absolutely
you, sir.
right, sir.
with you. Yes. So shall I answer or you'll ask question?
I think Rajendra wanted to ask a question, and then there are a couple more questions which are there in the chat box which have come in the between. Yeah, Raj, go ahead.
Yes. Hello.
Rajendra.
Thank you very much, Professor Rajkumar, for this enlightening talk. And I must say that your work, your books are very helpful for teaching of Dalit courses, and which we have just started. It's very heartening that we have started teaching Dalit literature as a discipline. What my question is, as a teacher, I have taught the outcasts, Shankur Limbalis outcasts for 2 years, and then it is lifted off, and now we have I'm teaching Jutan, Om Prakash Valmiki's Jutan. What I realize is that of course it's a very new discipline, and we are just trying to introduce students to a certain aesthetics, certain sort of a brand of literature, which they were not really aware of. What I've understood as a teacher, realized as a teacher, to my frustration, is that after a point, a large number of students get bored, or they withdraw from attending classes. Maybe there's too much of poverty, too much of discrimination, too much of a sort of a critique of the dominant structure, Brahminical structure. So what could be the reason? And I look up to you as a source of inspiration, and also as a scholar. Could you give some pedagogical sort of tips on how to teach Dalit writings, and keep our students engaged for a longer time than just a couple of lectures they attend with a lot of curiosity, and then they feel like, "Arey yaar, yahi rona dhona hai Dalito ka sara," so there will be less 5 students out of 30 after a point. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. So Rajendra, thank you for giving the feedback. That my experience is, that the opposite, because recently we have in MA final elective called Dalit study, and you can't believe, that we had to restrict students taking this course, that this is called open elective, and students not just from English, but also Persian, Urdu, philosophy, sociology, language, and also, that MI. Also, I had to restrict, the 250 or something we have to do. It was so, interesting for them. I don't know, that, and also my experience in teaching, say, I offer 3 different courses for MPhil around the list study. And also, that I teach, of course, the different MA, that courses. Say this semester I'm teaching a gender paper where Bama's Karuku is there, that. So I cannot give you, that proper tips, because, that you're innovative in the sense that how to that how to make your class room interesting. So I think that Rona Dhona that has to be properly addressed, because if this is the case, I think that Dalit literature is not just about poverty and that all the negative. try to bring positive or positivity into your classroom discussion, because as I always tell, that Dalit literature maybe, that the whole idea of, that narrative of pain is over, Rajendra, for long back. That if you read my recent book, I tried to contest the whole idea of Sisir Kumar Das. Sisir Kumar Das um, had an essay called Dalit Literature is Nothing But Narrative of Pain. That is no more, real or true. Say if you are reading, say, Jhutan, Om Prakash Balmiki, that look at the interesting way, that first page, if you are teaching Jhutan, the first page itself is a critique of Premchand's, that idea of depicting Indian village. First page, it is very.
Yes, yes, the Gandhian, also the Gandhian, critique of Gandhi's village.
No, I'm talking about Indian village, that ideal Indian village. Every writing of Premchand you read, you that try to be experimenting with your classroom, because that you as a teacher has to be very, very innovative, that as and when the situation demands, of course. And there are also intertextual, as you can bring Gandhi, of course, definitely, but by the time, that 1936, when Premchand was writing Godan, he was, that he left Gandhi long back, because
Yes,
he did not believe in, that Gandhi's.
Yeah, he was with the progressive writers movement by then.
Passive resistance, and then he became a Marxist, that progressive writer. But that what I'm telling you is the cultural capital of Dalit writing. You read Om Prakash Balmiki Jhutan, or Saran Kumar Limbale Outcast, Bamas, that Karuku, or Baby Kamles, that Prison He Broke. So half of the thing maybe, that narrative of pain, which, that student might find maybe, that, I don't know, it depends on how you try to bring this discussion into your classroom. But that half of the text is also depiction of what I say, Dalit cultural capital.
Right.
A rich Dalit culture, which was earlier not there in Indian literature. So I always give this example of, say, Om Prakash Valmiki, who is a Bhangi, basically, that. But writing about, say, Bhangi community is what, that I will try to theorize it by saying what Michel Foucault talks about, technology of knowledge.
Right.
Yeah, that knowledge coming into the purview of academic discussion for the first time, which was earlier not available to, say, Indian audience. They never knew actually, that about Dalit culture. It's just like British not knowing about, say, African culture and dismissing it by saying that this is, that Africa is nothing but a dark continent. And that's precisely because, that we don't know anything about. I mean, you cannot be dismissive of, that people's culture. So, and that you read, say, Outcast, Karan Kumar Limbale, he brings, that how many characters of mythology, Indian mythology. Student can be interested, that, say, he talks about Jarasandha. My life is like Jarasandha. If you, yeah.
Yeah, Valmiki talks about Dronacharya.
No, Jarasandha is being killed, that two of his pieces, that one part, if you remembered about Jarasandha was killed by Krishna.
Yeah, by Krishna.
Jarasandha was difficult to be killed, hope you know about, unless and until
yeah.
two parts of his body into two, the different, say, side, because just put in one side, then again two parts will come and then, the join together and Jarasandha. No, so this was politics by Krishna. So I'm talking also about, that how different mythological characters to be reinterpreted, and our students have to be engaged. That please, that as a teacher, whoever is there in this, maybe, that lecture, the whole idea is to let them think. Yeah. Allow them think, just giving lecture perhaps will be boring, because that how much you can talk about. Let them, they come out with their own perhaps, that interpretation, reading, and also explanation. And as a teacher,
Right.
our duty is whether to, just to say whether they are right, wrong, or maybe, that more things could be said about the subject. So I think, that if you're asking me about the pedagogical approaches, Dalit literature has to be read critically, what Paulo Freire talks about, critical consciousness. Yeah.
Right.
And in order to make it critical consciousness, you have to make them. It is not just that you just deliver a lecture and then let them go, but let them contribute. What suppose they say in a classroom situation, you can that ask them to react to certain situation, whether they know or they don't know. If they know, how much they know, so the degree of knowledge. So I think the Rajendra Dalit literature is very fresh, new, with new language and new aesthetic, and there are a lot of issues that we need to perhaps discuss and debate across. So if you can say, ask your class class to have a debate, maybe that let them come out. Say if you talk about reservation, people will be so happy
Right.
bring a debate and a discussion about reservation. You will be that perhaps you won't have sufficient time even to finish your class.
Right.
So this will be what that my answer to your question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
I think there are a couple of last questions towards the end. About one is about again.
Anubhuti and Sahanubhuti, shall we go for Sharina?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah, yeah.
I'd be very grateful. The question is a larger aesthetic question. Can somebody who's not a woman or a Dalit write about their experiences? And can they touch us? Can they raise our consciousness by talking about, Dalit experiences and women's experiences?
Yeah.
We know there is a difference, of course, when a woman speaks or a Dalit speaks.
Yeah.
But I would like you to speak a little more about Anubhuti and Sahanubhuti, as you said.
Yeah. Yeah. So that Sharina, the whole debate is centering around the idea of experience. That according to Dalit Panthers Constitution, anyone can write about Dalit experience so far as Dalit writing is concerned. So Premchand can write, Anantamurthy can write, but what is the problematic of non-Dalit writing about Dalit, as I have already pointed out, that they mostly show pity and sympathy to Dalit character, which Dalit they don't need. Number one. Number two is that because they also that portray Dalit characters in a very negative way, as I pointed out, that you read any number of novels that I mentioned 10 or 12 novels, that, and every novel you see that Dalit characters are portrayed as lazy, quarrelsome, the drunkard, passive, docile. Dalit writers will not write that, that. So just to make, that one understanding of Dalit writing, I'll come to maybe, that later on women's writing. So Dalit writings are just opposite, that they try to contest the whole idea of pity and sympathy by saying that, of course, that the idea of realism is there. What we have Toral Jatin Gajarwala's book called Untouchable Fiction. Thereby, she is writing that if Premchand is writing about social realism, Dalit writing can be interpreted as new social realism, which means, that one step forward, which means that the idea of experience that Dalit writers are writing about, and as I have already pointed out, that experiences are reflective of what they know, believe, and also that try to represent the best in their writing. So whether it is come to poetry, short story, novel, or even autobiography, there is that Dalit writings are always autobiographical, because experience they know the best, that. So This is about, that Anubhuti versus Sahanubhuti. But, the Sahanubhuti, as I have already mentioned, that say Premchand, or maybe you are Anantamurthy or Arundhati Roy or Mahasweta Devi, that how much progressive they might be. Maybe, that they are true to themselves. Whenever, suppose they are imagining Dalit characters, the fact that they were upper caste, that men and women, they had no experience of being Dalit. So whatever they could imagine, think, they could write. Now the whole idea of, that Sahanubhuti has to be, as, that one of the question was, to be empathetic is very nice, that to be empathetic, but even in the most progressive writings of Premchand, Anantamurthy, and Mahasweta Devi, I find this, the depiction of, the Dalit characters or even tribal characters, both, the Dalit and tribal character, and also sometimes women character, particularly, that if we are talking about Indian upper caste men, then they talk about, that something which can be considered what I say, romanticization. Romanticization of, say, Dalit characters, tribal characters. So I gave the example of Premchand in, say, Godan, talks about Dr. Malti as a potted plant. Potted plant is, the most fanciful, that's a imagination of a town or urban woman, because she's a doctor, she doesn't have maybe, that. So this is what Premchand, that idea of an urban woman. But he goes on describing about a tribal woman whom, that if you remember during picnic, Malti and Mehta, Mr. Mehta, they go to the, go for sightseeing, and they encounter a tribal woman, and her body has been described by Premchand in most romanticized form. She has an athletic body, etc. I also gave the example of, say, Anantamurthy's, that Sanskara, Chandri, and, that Chandri and another woman is there, is being portrayed as Ramba, Menaka, and Urvasi. Most sexualized body. This is, that the problems of being upper caste man. Now, coming to women's, that Anubhuti, I think, that this is my position. You may be, that you may judge. I think, that anyone can write about, say, Dalit, tribal, women, even disabled, etc., etc. I mean, even if suppose one has different location, one can write. The problem is, how does one write? Say, I, being a man, cannot experience being a woman. I may not be able to, that undergo the similar kind of experience. Particularly, I'm talking about psychology of a woman. So whatever I think, I can write, but whether it is true to the kind of woman experience, that needs to be perhaps debated. So I think, that writing is one thing, but how realistic, the portrayal of the writing, that matters. So Sharina, perhaps, that I will leave it here, maybe, that as a, that open case for further debate. And
I think it is always something we will debate even with our students. But probably one of the things that I could add to your points to Rajendra, because I really, I try very hard. So, I can understand his position, is to not only talk about things like reservation and current political issues which link to the text, but also ask them to take a leap of imagination, because this is a world they have not experienced. And unless and until they think for a moment of themselves in that situation, they cannot understand it. They can't even understand it. So they have to take that leap of imagination, have to imagine themselves as deprived.
Yeah.
That is a very, very important, I feel. That is maybe, maybe a very simplistic way, but I think that is how one can build a bridge between a very urban, privileged world and a world which is not that privileged, if I could just put it like that.
You are very right. I fully agree with you, Sharina.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for your talk also. It was stimulating.
Thank you. Yeah, so Kapil has a question. This is about principal's reservation.
And what he said, I think Kapil's question was,
The situation better now, even by now, it is being used in much more negative manner. Don't you think, sir, it should be abolished by now? Acha. Reservation has to be abolished. You know that. So, Kapil, you know that you may be wrong because as you know that both principal sir and me, you know that we have already pointed out that reservation has not been filled up yet. So maybe you know that we need to perhaps think about instead of you know that abolishing it, unless and until we try to you know that bring the whole idea of giving equal opportunity. Perhaps you know that reservation should be there. Because reservation is just one way to give equal opportunity. Given a chance, people will do better, I think.
yeah.
Pratibha is 2014, a very renowned professor said in a conference that there is nothing left in Dalit literature to search and study. Okay. My question is, sir, is literature is just to study and evaluate or more than that? I think literature, this is very pertinent question, Pratibha, if you are around, that it is the literature, you know, that literature that will bring you know that sensibility, unlike say social sciences and science, pure science or natural science, whatever. Literature's duty is perhaps you know that to bring sensibility among you know the readers or students and teachers and researchers. So I think you know that literature has much more you know that role to be played, not just in the classroom and maybe you know that maybe university, but goes beyond university. You know that I always talk about there should be a kind of bridge between campus and community so far as literature is concerned. So it is only through literature that we can bridge this you know that link between the campus and community. So it goes more than you know that the classroom discussion, etc., etc. Murari has another question.
And he says it's a
Sorry.
He says it's a comment, more of a comment than a question.
You said, not a question. Acha, a better and perhaps clearer and credible differentiation between caste and would be division based on corporeal, color-based and somatic stratification rather than a rigid, immutable hereditary segregation of such. Okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's all, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's clear. Thank you so much. I mean, there have been some very, very interesting questions. The question answer session has been almost as long as the talk itself. So that shows how much people have engaged with the entire issue and with what you have spoken about in this very, very enriching talk. So thank you. And to bring the event to a formal close, may I invite our ELS member, Arunabh Chaudhary, who is going to propose the formal vote of thanks in this program. And thank you from my side once again for coming. Thank you, everybody. Arunabh, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of the English Literary Society and the Department of English, Zakir Hussain, Delhi College Evening, I extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to Professor Rajkumar for taking time out of his very busy schedule and grace the occasion today. We have all come out of the lecture more learned and wiser, and it has been a tremendous learning experience for all of us. I thank our principal, Professor Masroor Ahmed Beg, for always being a pillar of support and encouraging all the activities that we do as a department. I thank our department teachers and other faculty members of the college for guiding us at every step to make the event a success. And most importantly, I thank our audience. Friends, faculty members, and students from across Delhi University and elsewhere who have joined us today, both on Zoom and on Facebook Live. We will be back with with another lecture next month. Thank you all once again. Wishing you all a lovely evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Raj.
Thank you, Professor Rajkumar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Kumar.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.